Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Center in Moscow. This event is part of a year-long series called Makers of a Nation, highlighting American makers. My name is Helen Wallace McDonald, and tonight we are talking with an incredible person, Pallavi Sen, my friend, who I've known for 11, 12 years now. 11, yeah. Pallavi is the Associate Professor of Multiples and Distributed Art at Williams College in Massachusetts. Hello, Pallavi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, and
Oh,
I'm so.
I can't hear you.
Wait, you.
Oh, dear.
Well, I hope
Hello?
everybody else can hear me.
Sorry about that. 1 second.
Yes, can
I'm
everyone
just going to
else
fix this
hear me?
tech.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Great.
Pallavi, tell us about yourself. Pallavi is going to introduce herself and give a lovely presentation on her work. And we're very excited to speak with you and learn all about you and your wonderful, wonderful artwork, which I have right here on my walls.
Thank you, Helen. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm very happy to share my work. So I was born and raised in India between New Delhi and Bombay, and then I came to the US when I was 19 years old to study. And then I went back and forth, and then I came back for, my master's in sculpture. And I began working here, did like a lot of different jobs until I started teaching. And that's kind of the main job I've had for the last 7 years. And so I spend half my week in New York and half my week in Williamstown, Massachusetts for the colleges. And I work within a lot of different materials and media, but today I will focus mainly on the more architectural aspect of side of my work, which includes tiles and gardens, but mainly focusing on tiles in the interior spaces, and also how they relate to and are inspired by the work that I do the rest of the year, which could be on paper or textile or in sculpture and so on. And so that's where we will begin. And also, I would love if, as you have questions, you can, of course, put them in the chat, but please feel free to ask any kind of question, or as we're going through, if there's something that is not clear or some work that you want to know more about, just, flag it here or make a note, and, we can discuss that after. Okay, so here we go. That is, well, so these are, I found some tiles that I had made when I was 20 years old. So I'm 37 years old now. So that is 17 years ago. And I went to college in Columbus, Ohio, at a school called the Columbus College of Art and Design. And I went there because they had a really incredible illustration and glass blowing program, which is what I thought I wanted to do. And I got a scholarship to go there. So a lot of colleges, because I was an international student, it's very expensive to go to school here. But I got a very generous scholarship, which is why I was able to do this. And when I was in my ceramics class, there in the same city, there's another university called the Ohio State University, and somebody there had invented a particular kind of like tile press where you could just put a blob of clay and put the lever down, and it would basically suck out all the water from it and mold you this like perfect tile, which I suppose is how industrial tiles are made anyway, but or sometimes they're like slip cast. But what was really incredible about this technique was that if you make tiles by hand, which you can absolutely do and has been done for thousands of years, it has to be such that it doesn't warp at all, so that it can be flat and beautiful. And so if you look at old tiles in different, like older monuments, you will see that there's a lot of some variation because it's difficult to get them to be exactly the same. But this sucked out all the water and it was completely dry so that the clay would not move at all. And so you had this perfect surface. And so I was, of course, drawing a lot at the time. And I was a young artist. And I mean, I'm still a young artist. I was even younger then. And I was, I was doing on tiles what I would have done on paper. And sometimes sometimes like a question comes up, or like, what do you make, or how do you know what to make? And I really didn't know what to make. And what did I do? I just went back to like something that I wanted something to be special. This is just the Devanagari alphabet, so it's the alphabet of the other two languages. I speak Hindi and Bengali, and Bengali is a little bit different, but this is mainly for Hindi, and a couple other Indian languages use the script. So I made the alphabet, I made faces of people, I made some other faces, but I don't really quite know what I had a surface, and I haven't seen these. I don't even know where they are, but I made them. Anyway, then lots of time passed, about 5 years passed, and I went to graduate school, and I spent 2 years, making a lot of different work. I studied sculpture, and at the very end of my graduate program, you have to finish with a thesis project. And so what I wanted to make, and what I clearly, you can see I failed at making, was a greenhouse. And this is not a greenhouse at all, and I didn't plan it right. I didn't give myself enough time, neither did I know how to do it. So I made something which looked like kind of an exploded like metaphor of a greenhouse. It's not that at all. However, in the process, I did learn how to make quilts, and I started making tiles again. And these are tiles that I didn't make the actual physical tile. I bought that, like a bisque tile. And so if you're not familiar with ceramics, and maybe at least, there are many ways of classifying this, but at least the way that is taught conventionally, so the word bisque means a tile or ceramics that have been fired to a point where the water it's completely dried, but it can still absorb water. So when you have like pots in which you are putting plants in, that is a bisque, that is usually bisque, which is why it can take in water and leave water. But if you have like a glass in which you're drinking coffee, that has been like glaze fired or high fired, which means that it can no longer absorb water, and that means it can contain water and keep it in there. So that's the next level of firing. So these tiles have just been bisqued. That means that they are no longer fresh clay. If I put it into water, it's not just going to become mud, but it can also hold images, and I can fire it once more. So that's how I made these images, using underglazes, which are basically these like minerals and chemicals that have been made into like a powdered form and then put into an emulsion, like into like a very like a kind of a slimy paste with which you can paint onto a surface. And usually the colors, they stay kind of the same. This is not the same as a glaze, which completely transforms in color after you take it out of the kiln. This more or less stays the way it is. So I learned how to make these, and then I also at the same time began painting. So painting is a very big part of what I do now, but it's not something I studied. It's not something, I guess you don't even have to study it. People paint and draw from the time they're children. So it's like one of the oldest things we do. But I began painting, and it was a really valuable exercise for me, because very soon after I graduated, I didn't have a big studio and I didn't have all this space. And because I don't have like a permanent home, or I didn't at the time in this country, I don't have, my parents don't live here, so I can't just, make stuff and put it into their house, or store it in somebody's basement, or none of those things. So painting was a really beautiful way for me to continue to think about ideas within sculpture. For example, I really wanted to work in metal and make mobiles, and I didn't know how to make them, or I don't know if I really want to even make them, but I liked the thought of it, and I wanted to see what it could be, to imagine it. And so painting became a way to feel the presence of something, to think about how I might design something, but by way of just making a painting of it, and satisfying that urge, and the ability to imagine within a flat surface, which is so light you can carry it anywhere, that it doesn't cost as much at all. And I really loved working this way. Here's another one off, and I also started using it as a way to um, remember beautiful things that I had seen or experienced. So I made this in the state of Wisconsin, in the middle of the US, and I was staying in this one part on a farm at an artist residency where you farmed in the morning and then you got a studio. And I heard what I thought was like hundreds of coyotes outside my window, and they were screaming at night, and I wanted to remember that. And then also something that I love about painting is that it helps me paint not only what I would like to make, but paint the form of like a technique that I would like to learn. So I made this painting after I had learned how to make frescoes on plaster. So this wall, and fresco is a technique where you paint on fresh, like a wet plaster, and you can probably see this in most like old churches, most older buildings, medieval time buildings. People don't do fresco so much anymore, but and most like older religious buildings, monuments, there are frescoes inside government buildings, there are frescoes inside them. That was the way in which people made murals across the world, on most continents. And so I was learning how to do that. So I made a painting of that. And then the floor of this house is made with these tiles, which are a Portuguese style of making tiles, which I saw in Bombay when I was growing up, because that's where the Portuguese first came. And there's a lot of Portuguese influence on the architecture. And then, I have, of course, like been raised on craft and craftsmanship, which is what the main way in which I saw art when I was growing up. We didn't have really any museums or art galleries, like very few, and perhaps only in the most major cities. But obviously, art was everywhere. Everything you wore, things that were happening in your house, or everywhere. And so this is the work of this artist named Sonabai Rajava, artist or craftsman. We use, in India at least, we use it interchangeably. And she works with like rope and clay work, and she made this beautiful filigree wall. This is Jabbar Bhai, who on the left, who I worked with to learn how to make natural dyes. And to this process called ajrak, which is like a process of layering different block prints made with dyes onto fabric. And this is an outdoor sculpture by the artist Noah Purifoy, who's on the right. And this is in Joshua Tree, California, which I also saw in the year 2017. Or was it 2018? Could be, no, 2017 is when I saw it. So I was very inspired by all of this, and I continue to be. So craft is what I look to, and how people make art outside of the way we understand contemporary art and maybe like a gallery system now. Outside of that, just like an everyday practice of making art, or historically how people think have done it. I think I'm very inspired by that. And so then in my paintings too, if you look at the eyes on top, they are made with the same technique as the rope and clay technique of Sonabai Rajava right here. And her clothes are made using ajrak, which is a natural dye technique. And I really feel like in your lifetime, unfortunately, I believe that there are not so many things that one can truly master, and it's like have like a full understanding of where you can modify a technique to make exactly what you would want to like refine your hand. There are a few things, like but to gain mastery over anything takes like 3 to 4 decades, and there are so many crafts in the world, and I don't think I can learn all of those in the life that I have and the life that I have left. So I find painting to be a beautiful middle ground, like a place where I can at least satisfy this feeling of understanding skill and understanding materials. Here at this time, I was also very interested in bending wood, which is also something I've never done, and stained glass. So there's my grandfather's image in stained glass. Stained glass is something I learned this summer. So slowly I feel like by painting something and thinking about it and trying to find ways to learn it, I am able to, but it doesn't happen with everything. And here's the whole painting together. I was also interested in architecture, and I remain interested in brickwork, marble work, facades of building, inlay work within that, tile work. I love bricks. I love bricks so much. I look at bricks everywhere I go, especially in like older towns in the United States. You can see the older like buildings made in the 1800s, early 1900s. There are all these beautiful, beautiful brick, and often sometimes they'll also have like small sections of tile. It's not always the case, but beautiful kinds of brickwork all over. And you see this like the world over. It's like such a beautiful, amazing material, which is like this perfect rectangular form with which so much can be made. I was also interested in learning how to make kites, which I did teach myself. And so there are some kites on the side, and incense, which you can see at the bottom right corner, which I also did learn how to make. I had the chance then in 2019 to visit Japan. And then I saw in the bathhouses in Japan, it was incredible how, again, using something similar, the rectangular form of a brick, but in this time rectangular form of a tile, a commercial tile, not handmade, like a totally industrially manufactured tile, being used in so many different ways to create a lot of like personal imagery or something that suits your personal aesthetic. And every bathhouse, it would be different. And this reminded me of like all the bathrooms in India that I've also grown up in, which are like, because we don't use bathtubs and we use a bucket, or so water goes everywhere. So that's why everything needs to be waterproof. And so people use tiles to make like incredible, head to toe incredible bathrooms with like all kinds of colors. And I love it. And so I try to imagine like this dream bathroom. And again, think, different ways of using brick. Dream room with a floor which is made out of this red iron oxide floor with plaster, which is a technique I've seen used in India where they waterproof it, and then there are tiles at the back. And I'm also, so I teach full time, and there are the great benefit of that I'll talk about in a moment. But I love teaching, and I love classrooms, and I love the design of classrooms. And so here I'm imagining what a ceramic studio could look like. And so in the middle is this something I love. And in every art school I've been to, every ceramic studio I've been to, I've always noticed and loved the section where they show you all the possibilities of like what glazes there are in that particular studio and what colors you can get. So it's like, okay, if you dip it in this red glaze, and then you dip it in the blue glaze, then you get this. But if you dip it in the blue first and then you dip it in the red, then you get that. What if you use a different clay? Then you get this. And then all these varieties. I love those. So this is designing that imaginary studio. And there's a tile wall behind it. And so while I am teaching, I was thinking about like this desire to like make this classroom. And then also every year I get to teach this quilting class where I modify this one room and teach students how to quilt. Everybody works on the floor. We have carpets laid out, and people make their work on the walls around them. And it's a really amazing way of working where you take small sections of pattern design. Nobody designs the whole quilt at once. You just do small sections and you keep moving it, pinning it, and you change it till it forms your final design. And while I was teaching this class, I was also teaching my printmaking class, which I teach every year, which is like carving linoleum and using that to make relief prints. And something you see all over print shops usually are instructions on, okay, don't do this, you can do this. These are the kinds of papers you can use. If you do this, this might happen. If this mistakes happen, this might happen. Because it's such a process-based activity, so that when your professor is not there, when the lab technician is not there, you need a lot of help to get things done. So you can look around and learn from all the posters. So I was also making this poster. And then I had the chance to, I applied for a grant to make a lab where students could, or we could make dyes from our surroundings, but also make natural dyes and then use that pigment in the printmaking studio, use that pigment to dye fabrics for the quilting class. And I wanted to do this after I had converted my print shop into a non-toxic space. So there's no solvent being used. There are no, everything is water soluble. Everything can be washed in the sink. So it smells really good. You don't have to wear gloves while working there. And so I wanted to extend that into really thinking about how we can make our own pigments. And so I was inspired by what my students were making, how they were working. And took that technique of learning how to make quilts when you make small sections and you put it together and you can keep moving it around to make a tiled wall, which would be at the back of this classroom, this new dye lab, so that when people are working with dyes, when people are working with water, there's like a non-porous, relatively at the back, which can kind of absorb that dye and keep the room like waterproof and clean. So that's how I started working on this. This was my first large-scale tiled project. And I was looking at, of course, quilts and the way quilts are made, and also the different histories of how people have thought about color theory. And so, color theory, I would say, I don't even like believe in it. I think color theory is for somebody who has no idea how to make anything and you want like some perfect solution. And I believe, are we at 20 minutes? Or if you don't know what you're doing at all, then you can say like, oh, okay, this color goes well with that color, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's true at all. Like, it really depends on the amount you're using, what you're doing. And, you can, in every culture, what you think is a good harmonious color composition, what you think is tacky or garish, or what you think is elegant, every culture is totally different. And so it's not even like, oh, there's some universal way of like, oh, these are great colors that go well together. Whatever, some things are pleasing, but I generally find color theory to be truly a beginner, like, okay, it's useful when you're learning. So I looked at different ways in which people have shown how colors work together, or like color mixing. Color mixing, of course, I do believe in, because it's very real, and how how you mix things and and so I wanted that to be the backdrop of it. Here on the right and left hand side is Jose. He's one of the tile setters, and those are people who tile setters are very important collaborators for me, because they are the ones who know how to exactly translate what's on the surface just laid out into this perfect, precise form on the wall, making all these amazing cuts for different things to come in, like pipes, or like a socket, or like a shelf, and so on. And so this is what the wall looks like entirely. It's kind of maybe like a big, very big quilt. And what I really liked about it was that there were parts of this wall that I had left in the bisque state. If you remember when I was mentioning when it's a more porous form, especially in this like left-hand side corner where there's a big indigo vat, so that when color comes out of it, the tiles behind it can get like spattered with blue. So I liked that it would, change over its lifetime. So this was the big, and that's me for scale. So this was like the first project I did, and this was in 2022, so not that long ago. And then after that, in the following year, I was working on a garden project and designing that. And so again, I started making paintings to think about how I would make the garden. Perhaps it's a form of procrastination to not work on the thing itself, but to make paintings about it, to delay it as much as possible. But here I'm deciding like how the facade of the garden will be, how the gates will be. And then we start making the garden, building it. These are the beds. And then I started making some tiles for this project based on the project I had just done last year with the dye lab. So I felt, more confident, because I knew like, okay, I've done this and I know how it works. I know how it responds. But what was exciting was now I could see how it responds to outdoor elements, like to rain or to soil, and what would happen, or the metal these metal clasps that were held by, like how it would get affected with like rust and so on. And here's my mother helping me glaze all the tiles. So something that's really important, and also probably the worst part of this work, and why I only want to do it maybe once a year, is that everything that you glaze, unfortunately, you have to layer at least 3 times. So that's why you can't just make some like super expressive. You could, but it would be very difficult to replicate because you have to keep layering it again and again and again to get the color to be really intense. So it's very boring. It's extremely boring. I've heard hundreds of hours of podcasts and books and conversations while doing this because it's utterly dull, this aspect of it. So but you just do it, you just keep doing it, and then the pleasure is for later. When you take it out of the kiln, it looks incredible and you feel very happy, so you have to keep thinking about how happy you'll be later on, because this is not nice, I don't think. So we made lots of tiles. Here she is helping me make this marble tile, which was based on another marble that was already hanging in the garden. And then this is what the garden looked like. There's some stained glass by my friend Devin Ballara, who I designed it and then she produced it. And she's the one who taught me how to make stained glass this summer. Then my participants at a residency called Skowhegan, where I worked in the summers, are helping me make all the beads for it. I wove this trellis for it where plants could climb up. And so this is what the whole composition looks like, and with the tiles at the bottom. And it's like, everything that I like to work with, which is fabric and sculpture and plants and stained glass. And this is what it looks like over time. And then students worked in this garden all summer long because the garden was a proposition. It was like an idea for what a classroom garden could be like. What could you learn over a season or a semester in the garden? So they made notes about everything they were learning, everything they were observing. And, then I continue painting, and I wanted to include these paintings just to show you how the patterns that I am thinking about or working with in my tiled work are also like recurring in the way borders are around in paintings as well. Again, this is for those of you who have maybe done color theory or had to make a color chart. On this, you can see in the middle of the quilt is actually every possible way of mixing these two sets of colors. They're the same colors, but on the one side, one is on top of the other, and the other is on top of this. So that's the difference between the two sides of the quilt. Here's another, I love working in a gridded format. My mother helped me make this also. I love tiles on the floor. These are paintings of some balcony and my friends sleeping on the ground. I really love architecture. I think in another life, I would love to have been an architect, but unfortunately, most architects are not designing like wondrous things. You're designing like some bathroom and some college. Bathrooms are very important, but like some classroom or some shelf. Like you're not, the architecture I love is, I know probably not what I would have gotten to do, which is like, one project you get to do once in a while. So I'm happy with my profession, but here are more tiles, more diamonds, such a versatile form. Another tiled wall, but in a painting. Quilts being made. And then, I want to go back for a second to the school where I worked in the summers. I was one of the deans at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, which is in Maine. And it's a 9-week program where artists can come. You can also apply. Anybody in the world can apply to come and just be with 60 other artists and make your work and have faculty to talk to and just have a wonderful time. And so it's a beautiful program. And I was a participant in 2017, and then I was dean in 2022, 23, 24. And this is an imaginary scene of all my friends who I've met there over the years, working and sitting under these apple trees they have very old apple trees, and they're all looking at like artworks that they love and they like. And then in that same school, this is on the right hand side is the director of the program, Sarah Workna, and this was her last summer there. And so there was a room that we had turned into a textile studio, and I wanted us to like make a ceramic wall together. So on the left is my friend Ash Felito, with whom I run I used to run a bird club, which was a bird club for artists where scientists would come and talk to artists about birds. And so I ran this with her. These are some of the posters I made for that bird club, which now was before I ever made those tiles. And I think I just have always loved stacked diamond shapes because I apparently have been doing it everywhere. But so we, all the participants, we tried to like make, we got together and we started making tiles. So all of these tiles are made by hand, like from the beginning. Like we wedged the clay, made slabs of the clay, cut them into squares, dried it, fired it. Then, you know, different people would come in and paint different things. Sometimes it was a group of images. Sometimes it was just like, okay, I'll paint a couple diamonds or I'll paint some stars. And then, or somebody would make a huge, this is someone who made kites, paper kites. So they made this image. And then with all the pieces of clay we cut off, we made these like longer slabs, which you could insert into the tiled areas like that. And I will, and then these are the barns, the red barns in the school. There are lots of older barns, so we made those. The school also has a lot of beautiful moths, so we drew those. And so it was a complete, like, beautiful group project. Very, very difficult to assemble because all the tiles were very irregular, so it was not easy to keep in place. But that is what the whole project looked like. So I was very happy to do it. And then more recently, so that was another one. And then more recently, now we're coming to nearing the end. More recently, I had the chance to make a tiled wall, couple tiled walls for my friends, Evrim and Aveen, right there on the left, on the right-hand side, who live in the same town as Helen, who is here. And I met them while I was in graduate school in Richmond, Virginia, and I met them through Helen. I mean, I knew a couple other people there, but I mainly met them through Helen. And unfortunately, they had a fire in their bakery and they needed they were just renovating it. And I saw Aveen, the woman on the left there, and I saw her last year, and she was telling me about how they're redesigning some like kitchen or like backsplash area. And I was like, and here were the tiles they were going to use. And I just pitched myself and I said, oh, I want to make them, you should let me make them. And I will say, so many things that I've been able to do in my life have happened because I told somebody that I really want to do this. And it was not because I applied for something. It was not because, it was really just truly pitching myself and being like kind of shameless with that. Because why would anybody else get the idea that I can be good at something? You know I can do it. So I want to tell someone. And sometimes you do have to be like, have an excess of confidence, because I'd not really done anything in a commercial space like this. I'd never done something with another person. I don't make work for people ever. I don't have a boss. I don't make things that someone else wants. I make what I want, and then someone else, if they like it, they can have it. But I'm not a designer who works collaboratively in that way, because I don't like to be told what to do at all. So this was all new. And so I was so, so I made, first I was making a painting also to think about like what colors and how to think about this. And then and this was a really wonderful process, because I was able to really learn like, okay, how do you work with somebody? Even if even if I feel what I feel, like I'm going to do what I want, no one should tell me what to do. The thing is, it is going to be in a public space. It does belong to a bakery with two incredible bakers who love it. This is their bakery. It's not, it's not my bakery. It's their bakery that they love and know, that people love and know, and they have a vision also. And so how do you work with somebody who is equally passionate about something? But they have to trust you as well. So we went over like colors, like, okay, what colors do they like? What do they not like? And then I made a sketch of like, okay, this is maybe this is what it could look like. It's not going to look like this exactly. And this is the other thing, is like, I don't like getting bored while working. So I don't make something and then make the exact thing again, because that's so dull for me to do, then it's so predictable. So this gave them a sense of, okay, this is the world in which this is a kind of aesthetic and colors, and these are the things that might happen. It's not guaranteed, but this is kind of how you will feel when you look at the whole thing. So then I'm so happy that they trusted me. And I'm so happy I get to work with people who can who can I think it's very bold. Would I trust someone like that? Probably not, So I'm just glad that other people have the capacity. And so then I started making the work and making different things and asking them, like, okay, what are some things you like to do? What are some things you're interested in? And they would tell me, and I would actually, I didn't actually share with them what I was doing until much later. I would share it with maybe Helen or maybe other friends, because I didn't want to hear, well, I guess I didn't want to hear anything negative because I would feel discouraged. And I also knew that this is going to be so good that even if it's not what you want, you're going to probably like it, because at some point the materials you're working with are so good. It's beautiful clay. These glazes are gorgeous and glossy. How can you not like them? It's not even about me or you. The material itself is so beautiful. So, oh my gosh, we're coming to the end. So for one of the first things we made was this. Evrim really wanted this phrase to be included, which was, and I've completely forgot, but basically I've forgotten exactly what it means, but like how out of like fire, like something new emerges. Maybe those of you who know Latin can correct me right away. And this was a part of the one wall. So there's the sketch, and now you can see what the differences and similarities are between the two. Was another wall. Here's another view of it. And there's on top of it is a braid made out of bread with like different seeds and things inside it. That is me. And then on the left-hand side is Charles, who was the tile setter. Again, incredible man who I had such a pleasure working with, who really taught me so much about what makes a project, like how, it's one thing you make this whole thing, then you have to lay it out a certain way so that they can put it a certain way. There's timing to it, there's precision to it. He was so good at cutting the tiles. Amazing person to work with. This is another section of the wall. The middle part of this I made between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, and it was the last thing I had to make, and I just did whatever I wanted, and I didn't know what to think. So it could be anything. It could be the sides cross section of bread, it could be ham, it could be waves, it could be an illusion, who knows. And here's what it looks like now with, some parts are obscured, some parts can be seen. And it just feels like, to me, it just doesn't even feel like my work or anything. It just feels like it's a part of the bakery and it belongs to the bakery. And here's one tile that you can see if you ever visit, which has the names of all the people who helped me paint it: Emma Newhouser, Zoe Giles, Julia Cassell, Juna Pfeiffer, Seamus Connor, James Leedy. And these are actually, with the exception of Zoe, were all once my students, and now they've graduated and they live nearby. So they came and worked with me. And this is the last project I want to show you, which is for a kitchen in Oxford, England. And again, they had seen the pictures of the dye lab and they really liked it. And they, this is truly the extent to which I can make sketches, because I was like, okay, again, like this is the shapes I might use. I asked them what colors they like, and it could be anything after that. So here's Emma Newhouser with her younger sister, Olivia, who is 18 years old, helping me in the studio to make the tiles. And these are some compositions I made afterwards of like different ways in which you could organize the tiles. And this is what the total scene looked like, which is going to go into their new house on top of their kitchen. So it'll be in someone's home and it'll be seen, and hopefully they will like it for a long time. But there it is. It's sitting in England right now. I don't think it's been put on the wall, but that's everything. Feel free to type any question you have about anything. No question too small, no question too silly.
Beautiful.
And, ask away.
Bravo.
Hi, Helen.
Hi. So beautiful. So extraordinary. Oh, I'm so glad that we're looking at this, because I wanted to say how once everything was up, it was so incredible when you were installing this, and you're very disciplined and prolific, and you had everything planned out. It was so professional, so extraordinary. You knew exactly what to do, and you've collaborated with so many people who are very good at what they do, each person's part in the process, especially when it comes to installation, which is permanence. It's critical. And you absolutely did an extraordinary job, first of all. But it also, because the bakery it was 12 years that the bakery existed before this fire. And then they rebuilt, and they didn't change much about the space, except for a huge new oven. But the orientation stayed the same. And I felt that you, and still feel that you really captured all of those years. You know, the tiles exist on the walls, and they're behind the bread or behind the proofer. You know, they're just integrated into the experience of going there and being in this space that's so special. And it feels like you brought, with these colors and shapes and the life of this, and your perspective, you captured all that time. So we lost nothing. I mean, just so special, Pallavi. What a beautiful, extraordinary body of work. I mean, I could watch you go on for hours and hours. I think you should. I think you should just keep going and show us everything, like round the clock. I had some questions, but I have a few questions. I wanted to just mention your work at Skowhegan up in Maine, and I visited you there, and it was such a beautiful place. And I'm so glad that you were the dean there, and I hope do you still go to Skowhegan? Do you still participate? Because it's such a great community.
You know, so I don't know, because I left the year after the director I worked with also left. And so now there's a new administration, but also I have friends who still work there. So I get to hear about it. And also, you know, Skowhegan, and maybe this is true of like kind of a lot of older residencies in this country, always have this like moving cohort of people who you get to meet after, and they're like, oh, I went there. And then you realize this is true of so many schools, is that the school kind of lives beyond the session that it's there. It's its own.
Right.
People come in and they have one experience, another group comes in, has a different experience, and the school keeps living. And so I think about it. I think about it very often. When
you do lots of residencies. That's such a big part of an artist's life. And that seems like it's such a prestigious one. But I wanted to mention that you're in Texas currently.
Right now I'm in Texas, in Austin.
Building an exhibition,
Building an exhibition, and I'm working in a different clay studio. And the only reason I didn't include those works is because the file size of this PDF was so big. I had to take out another 50 images, which are not here. But anyway, what I love about residencies and what I love about like being able to work within an institution is that you get to meet so many people. And so, you know, when I came here, I didn't know any. I knew a grand total of 4 people in this country when I came here, and they were my relatives who had moved here in the 80s, and I saw them maybe once or twice then. But I didn't know anybody. And so I feel like the only way that I would get to know people or even afford to travel in this country was through residencies. Also, there were so many months where, because of like I was a student on a student visa, there were just things that I could or could not do. And residencies give you housing, they give you a place, they often give you food. That you also meet so many people there and have this like the kind of beautiful time you have when you're in school, where you have unstructured time and you can just talk to another person and go for a swim with another person. And so it's a beautiful way to kind of extend your childhood into your 20s and 30s and keep making friends.
Fantastic. So we have some questions from the audience. Your tile work often reflects Indian patterns, culture, and scenes from everyday life. Have you ever experimented with visual traditions or themes from other cultures? And do you find cross-cultural influences inspiring in your work? What a great question.
So I will say that even Indian culture itself is actually, as you would know of like any old country, which is India is, you know, thousands of years old, it's thousands of cultures. So even for me, what I look at and work within is probably specifically certain textile traditions of India, of where I grew up. So if you go to another state, you know, because all the we became a country in 1947. Before that, it was like kingdoms and kingdoms that go thousands of years back. So as much diversity as like, you know, hundreds of languages, hundreds of cultures. Anyway, so I would say that that is already, I would say that's already happening. There's an idea of India that's exported to the world, which might seem more like one thing or monolithic, but it's actually so much. So I look at like the textiles or like the jewelry of Bombay, which is very different, like the different kind of patterns is very different. Let's say if you go further south, the way the architecture is, the stacked kind of like architecture is very different. If you go to Rajasthan, then there's amazing fresco. So I feel like I can't help but make that. And then a lot of, you know, here in the US, like one of the things I like the most, national parks, libraries, the quilting tradition, and the you know, those are my like favorite things. And so the quilts of the United States, and that, you know, there are so many ways in which people make them. I think that has been such an influence on me. Weaving traditions from across the world often begin to look similar because everyone's using the same format of the loom. So sometimes indigenous patterns from Peru look very similar to patterns that are coming out of the northeast of India because they're using the same backstrap loom. So even though there may not be any kind of direct cultural interaction. But
and you live here in America, and you're everyday life, everything you see, you often incorporate into just whatever you're painting.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like there is, you know, of course, like I often like, you know, paint myself. So there will always be,
I love that.
There will always be an Indian person in the work, but the scenes or where they are very much like, you know, this is a Luna moth and it's found in like New England where I am. I became interested in bird watching here. So a lot of the birds I look at are from here. All these artists who you are looking, all the works that all these people are looking at are all like different European and American artists who we love and we look at. So I will say, fortunately, my default education is through the grand palace of Indian aesthetics, which includes thousands and thousands and thousands of traditions in every possible material.
Wow.
But since beyond that, I would say what I gained from being here and in the United States with its like, sometimes this is obviously, it's also irritating because people here maybe work in a very kind of loose way, which I also find annoying because it doesn't have as much reverence for material. But what is amazing is that it's very liberating because you can do anything because it's not tied to legacy or tradition. So I think that is a very freeing way to do it. And I love that.
So here's another question. This is great. How do you usually start your creative day? Could you walk us through your process from the moment you have your first morning coffee, which I know a little bit about? As someone who works a regular 9-to-5 desk job, I'm curious whether your creative work has a similar routine or structure, or if every day looks completely different.
Yeah.
You're very disciplined, but anyhow.
I'm disciplined, but in the way that I do give in to like pretty much every desire. I will say I do work very hard, but I do work very hard. But the great thing is that I am so relaxed, and I mean, my morning I love dreams. I love dreaming, so I love to like sleep. And now that I'm getting older, unfortunately, I wake up at 7.
Yeah.
Just
no matter what.
I wake up at 7. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just I'm getting older. And then I go back and I think about other stuff. I try to delay work as much as possible because I do procrastinate a lot, and I think about other stuff, and I call up my parents on the phone. I am trying to like use less and less social media, and instead I'm trying to replace it with like, maybe I'm really trying to just read, even irresponsibly. Like when I have work, I'm reading instead. You know, I'm supposed to be doing something, but I'm reading my mystery book instead. But
you write too.
I write a lot. I like to like write about like some things I'm thinking about. I also love to, this is primarily, unfortunately, through Instagram, but maybe I'll find a different, like I love to like write about things I'm seeing,
Mm-hmm.
historical things. I do all of this. And then
It's
finally,
wonderful that you share. You give us this insight and this peek into your world and how you see it. And you also spent a very long time during your sabbatical last year walking El
well, yeah.
Camino and these incredible walks in these distant places. And you shared that with us, which I don't want you to go away from Instagram because I want to follow all of it. It's a great channel that we all benefit from and enjoy. But
I just
tell us
wanted to,
yeah.
I wanted to, but then after I've done dilly-dallying, I do start working, and then I work continuously, and I work pretty much till I go to sleep. And so then I would say I work like about 10 to 12 hours on like whatever art project I'm working on. And this comes at the cost, absolutely, of having a vibrant social life, which I don't have, because I think I meet my friends and I really try to have a beautiful time with them, but I don't see people every day. I can't, because if you kind of have to choose, like, do you want to hang out and chat all day, or do you want to do your work?
Yeah.
You can't do all of those things.
You, at least I've observed that you work until you're finished with.
I work until I'm done.
Yeah.
And so and now more and more I do have to, sleep, get enough sleep. So I just work. But, when I used to have a 9 to 5 job, I did, when I worked at a museum and I had that job, it was, I will say it is hard, because at least for me, that kind of a job, like, psychologically really drains me, having to sit in one place, and then it's very hard to do other things. But it's because I teach, I'm standing, I'm working, I get to move around, I get to talk to students. So I have always looked for jobs that are not seated jobs, where you can
in the
move around,
world,
where you're moving, where you can work with your hands, because that way I still have, like, emotionally and physically, I'm able to continue doing work afterwards as well.
Here's a great question. Can beginners make their own tiles at home? What basic tools would I need to start making tiles?
Yeah. So you do need access to a kiln, because the tiles are fired in a kiln. But sometimes I don't have my own kiln. I've always like used somebody else's. So sometimes a school might have a kiln, like a college might have it, a ceramics department, an art department would have a kiln. Or sometimes in some places, like, I don't know how it is where you are, but in some places there will be like a ceramic studio where you can get a membership in a city, and like artists come and make work there. There are different ways of doing that. So you do need that. That's one thing, which is a pretty big thing. Or if you have the space and time and money, you can buy a kiln also. It takes a huge electricity bill, but you can do that. So what you need clay. And you clay, you don't just dig it out of the ground right here. You can, but then you have to modify it to be stable. Like, all clay was, of course, dug from the ground, but you need to add things to it to make it so that it doesn't like just melt, in the kiln. So you need clay with the kind of what is by riversides also. And then you go to a ceramics shop, you buy the clay. You need to really strengthen your hand, so you really know how to wedge the clay, which you do for several minutes to take out all the air bubbles. You will need a rolling pin maybe to roll the clay out, and you need a knife to cut it into shapes, and some rulers so that you can kind of keep it the same. And what you need is, in the oven, when you have like a grill, which has like the crisscross of metal, some kind of mesh where you can lay your tiles and let it dry slowly, so that it dries from above and below slowly and doesn't warp. Those are the things you need. And then, if maybe you don't want to put any color on it, maybe you just want to scratch things into it, maybe you'll have to get some underglazes. But if you go to any art store or ceramic supply store, they can help you, but you do need the kiln. Or if you have a backyard, oh my God, if you have bricks and you have a backyard and your neighbors don't care, you can make your own kiln. You stack all the bricks together and you put light a fire underneath it. And yes, all of these things people could do before industrialization, so it's all possible. You just have to know how to do it properly.
How many different types of kilns and different types of clays are there? And do you have preferences? I'm sure you do.
There are so many kinds. I mean, I would say in a simple way, what you can recognize, you have porcelain, which is very, very,
Mm,
very fine white clay, and it's very smooth, very delicate, and very plastic. So you can make like very thin, long thing. It can stretch. So you have that. You have stoneware, which is like kind of
mm,
more grittier clay, which most coffee cups and things will be made out of that. And you have terracotta, which is basically just has iron in it, so it like looks reddish in color. Most of your planters and things are made of that. But within then you have so like hundreds of different kinds of clay bodies that come out of that. Right now I'm using a clay that when it fires becomes black. I'm using another one that
oh,
is like white with like specks in it. There's another one that is like a brown color. And these are all based on like the different kinds of chemicals that are inside it that change after they are fired, and the different
mm-hmm,
kind of earth that they are taken
mm,
from. So in different
mm-hmm,
parts of the world, which is why you have ceramics that look so different from each other.
mm,
And what also differentiates these clays is at what temperature they become their kind of final form. So sometimes you have certain clays, like all the tiles I work with you cannot fire them over like 1800 degrees, because
uh-huh.
after that they'll start melting. But then you have other clays which need to be fired to a much higher temperature to become mature. So that is also a difference in the kind of clay you're using.
Is porcelain your favorite? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, no, I was just I was thinking about this yesterday, that I'm actually really glad I don't like doing ceramics, because I truly cannot afford to add one more, because, recently I fell in love with like stained glass and I really love it. And
Right.
I'm going to start weaving rugs soon. And I love so many things, and
Yeah.
there just isn't enough time. And also because I don't want to just dabble. I want to be very good at something. And I
Well,
think
you're
ceramics
facile and you can go from material type to material type and application to application.
application.
Like you seem like someone who has experience with all of it and is willing to experiment with all of it and see what works. Like being a professor and having all this knowledge to share and then practice yourself. Um, I wanted to ask too about the kilns. Like, where are they made? Are they made all over? Do you know? Like,
Yeah,
are they?
they're made all over. They're made all over. I think many of the kilns that I use, I think in the past they were made in the US, but I think now they're imported. But some of the most special kilns which you can see, which they are kilns that have made with like fireproof bricks, but they've been made there in the space. So I have had the opportunity
Oh,
several times to fire my work in kilns that have been assembled by the ceramic studio, made on
hmm,
site using these bricks that are fireproof. Like, they're
wow.
like high temperature bricks.
Mm-hmm,
And it's constructed just by putting bricks together. And you can
mm-hmm.
deassemble it also. And so I love those kilns because they are, made. Actually, it's exactly like the kiln that Sabrosa used to have to make their bread. So it's made for the
Wow.
space.
Mm-hmm.
It changes with all the like all the different firings. How
Mm,
something looks when it's on the bottom shelf versus the top shelf can be very different. Like,
wow.
for example, if I go all the way back to the there, I think there are 108 slides here. If I go
I
to
love
the
it.
very first slide, there was a kiln
Wow.
in my school where it was a salt fired. So they were throwing salt in, and that's what was glazing these tiles.
Oh, yeah, the
And
glaze. Yeah.
the different colors are just based on where the tile was in the kiln and like how much heat it was receiving. So I love that way of working as well, where it's this particular kiln in a particular place.
And the
um,
glaze has a huge role. It can
It has a
change
huge role.
everything,
It can
right?
change everything. And it's also what
Chemicals.
I love about this. And maybe the way I work is a little more predictable because I'm working with underglazes that kind of look the way they look, like nicer versions of what you see before you fire. But a
Mm,
lot happens because of temperature. And so you try your best. And
mm-hmm.
then the 24 hours that it's getting heated, any number of other things can happen. And
Hmm.
you don't know there are samples. You can look at samples like, oh, this might look like this, but there isn't a guarantee that that's what it's going
Right.
to look like. So I like
Predictable
like,
unpredictability.
yeah, I like that it's like you try your best, and then quite different things can happen from that.
Okay, last question. What's next? What are you most excited about that's coming up for you?
What is next? What is next?
Well, you're finishing this show,
Oh
and
yes,
you
what's
just learned
next?
the stained glass certain
I just learned
technique.
stained glass. What is next is, I have some like things that just seem like what there are exhibitions which I'll do, which will be interesting. But I think what I'm really excited about is I have some time which will be open where I really want to start making paintings of the walks that I've been on and to try to remember different
The
scenes
walk.
from them.
Yes.
And because when I was last walking, I was walking from one town in France, and my goal was to walk till Rome. So I walked through Switzerland, I crossed the Alps, I went into Italy, and I kept walking. But then there was a heat wave, which is now continuing. And so I had to stop. And I have about 600 kilometers left. So what I'm really looking forward to is in the winter is completing my walk. That's that's the thing I'm most excited about, more than any object or painting or tile is what I really want to do.
Well, I can't wait to see the paintings of what you recall in your mind about those walks and those beautiful, extraordinary places. Pallavi Sen, you are just an extraordinary person. Thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you,
work and
Helen.
your life with us. We appreciate it so
And
much.
thank you, all of you. And,
Yeah.
if you ever have any questions there's some things that I didn't answer, but if you ever have any questions or you want to know more about it, feel free to write to me and I'll be happy.
And
to
your
share.
website is?
My website is pallavisen.com.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you.